Hello and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey.
Hello, my name is Dan.
And today we are so excited to talk about episode 8 titled The Acolyte of The Acolyte, which is the season 1 finale. Before we dive into that, we usually like to share a little bit about what we've been up to. We're going to do something a little different today and talk about something we got to experience this weekend. Would you like to talk about it, Dan?
Yes.
Introduce it.
This weekend, Joey and I, being in a large metropolitan city that has an orchestra, they did Star Wars The Force Awakens in concert.
Oh my gosh, it was fantastic.
If anybody's unfamiliar with the process and what this actually is, it is a Disney concert, Disney approved, sanctioned event where they will send the movie to different symphonies around the world and they'll show the movie, except the movie doesn't have any of the score. It is just the straight up dialogue and any background music that may be there. And you walk into the recital hall, there's a projector, and then the full symphony playing the music. It was fantastic.
It was incredible. Like, it was so good that I almost forgot that I was listening to the symphony.
Right.
And it was just so cool. We got T-shirts. It was a wonderful experience. The symphony was fantastic.
It was. If you ever have the opportunity to go and do it, I highly recommend it.
And they do it for several different movies and properties.
Different movies, franchises.
And I do want to say, we are going to one day do, if you haven't listened to us at all, or you have and may have forgotten, I am an enormous sequels fan. Dan is pretty good with the sequels. And just, we want to do a whole thing where I explain to Dan why I love them so much and everything. But I forgot just how fun The Force Awakens was.
It was. I really enjoyed it, and especially being very far removed from having seen it last. It was fantastic. Funny.
It's such a good movie.
Feel good for the most part.
Rey's introduction is my favorite character introduction in all of Star Wars.
Yes.
They give it the time it deserves. Anyway, that's probably enough about The Force Awakens, right? Ready to talk about that? Go ahead.
If you can go to it, go to it.
100%.
It is well worth the money.
We highly recommend it.
You'll be able to see from wherever you sit. You don't need to sit close. It's fantastic.
There were subtitles because it was kind of hard to hear over the symphony.
Yes.
Which helped. So, it was a fantastic experience. I would do it again 100% of the time.
Yes.
Amazing. All right, ready to talk about The Acolyte?
Oh, boy, am I.
Oh, man. So, yeah, as I said, this is episode 8, the season finale of The Acolyte. I'm phrasing that, hopefully. This is titled The Acolyte. Did you notice that it didn't have an episode title at first?
No.
It just said episode 8 is the title.
Yes.
If you watched it right on. It was weird.
Yes, it was like season... Because it said it twice. Like season 1, episode 8. And I'm like, why is it here?
Yeah. I think for some reason, maybe they decided something different. But this one is titled The Acolyte. I think the meaning's fairly obvious.
Perhaps.
Since it is one, we've talked about how the dash means two things. The story is together. I think it's one sister, air quotes and sister, becoming the Acolyte, and one losing her position as the Acolyte. It's the way I took it.
Yes.
Not much nuance
and I think there could be a little bit more of a double meaning later, which we'll discuss. But
cool. So without further ado, we'll just kind of jump into the story and we'll talk about it as we go. So kind of hit the bullet points going through what happened.
Very action-packed story.
Very action-packed story. And the action is so good in this.
Yes.
We open with Chimere, and I know that the marketing is calling him the Stranger, parentheses, alias Chimere. Just for simplicity, we're going to refer to the masked guy, played by Manny Jacinto, as Chimere, for simplicity. Right? You good with that?
Yes. If you are fans of the show The Good Place, I've also seen him referred to as Darth Bortles. So,
I haven't seen it, but Dan explained it to me, and I think that is very funny.
So I'm throwing that out there. If we can get that to stick, I'll take it.
I don't know if you're going to get me to stick to that, but you can use it. So anyway, we open on Chimere and Osha, where we last saw her. She had his helmet on, which, sensory deprivation, and we hear her breathing. It starts out without you even seeing her. You hear her breathing just like how we left her. And Chimere kind of sees her with the helmet on and goes up to her, but he quickly becomes possessed, very similar to what we saw Mother Anastasia do to Torben.
Mm-hmm.
His eyes go black, and it's kind of not really explained. It definitely seems involuntary.
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, and I think it was definitely involuntary, and it also allows us a little bit more insight into just how strong Chimere is.
Because he can resist it.
Resist it fairly. I think the only reason it got to him is because he wasn't expecting it.
Mm-hmm.
So he was able to break out of it fairly quickly, but still very, very cool.
Yeah, I know. And my question that I had for you here is, what do you think he was seeing? So we saw Mother Anastasia like actually having a full-on conversation with Torben. I imagine this was more chaotic.
I don't know, and that's where I tried to mention, like, because he's so much stronger. Did he even see anything?
I wonder. I imagine he saw something because he clearly was affected.
Did he see OSHA's vision? Was he watching that in real time, or was he seeing something of his own that he thought that,
I wonder if because OSHA couldn't control it, it would be something like he's kind of experiencing something similar to what she's experiencing.
I don't know. I think it's good that we don't know.
I know, and I thought that was really interesting. And when he is, like you mentioned, able to take the helmet off of her, she's got not quite the yellow Sith eyes, but she's got a very clear red ring around her eyes.
What I saw the red ring was, it was a reflection of her vision.
What do you mean?
Like, the red was the red lightsaber in her eye.
Oh, I see. I thought that it was like, when the dark side is used.
I saw this as a very slowed down still of it. And now that could have been a fan edit. I will admit I did not do my research fully. But it was the red lightsaber reflecting in her eye.
I don't hate that. For me, it's like she's tapping into the dark side.
I agree, but I don't know if she'd go full Sith eyes right off.
Well, she didn't. Yeah. Remember, she didn't go yellow. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. That's a great.
I will say that's not my observation. I saw it on Twitter, and I just wanted to bring it up.
It's what makes me lean towards the Sith eyes or dark side eyes is the fact that it's a circle. It's not like a bar. Mm-hmm. But I do like that idea of it resonating with the vision. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Season 1 or 2.
Oh my god. So anyway, the helmet's off, and OSHA is saying that she has a vision that we were just mentioning, and that vision is of May killing Sol. And she had his lightsaber, but she didn't use it to kill him. And I was watching Star Wars Explain's review of this episode, and he pointed out that this is very similar to like Rey and Kylo and The Last Jedi having visions of the same thing, but they're both kind of misinterpreting it. So this would be OSHA essentially seeing herself killing Sol. She spoiled it for herself.
Yeah.
OSHA's killing Sol is what she's, seeing. And this kind of, as we find out later in the episode, has some double meaning. Do you think that she sees it as May because of their physical similarities, or the Force similarities that we learn about?
I think she genuinely does not understand how far she's fallen, and she wholeheartedly believes that that's May.
Because she could never do that.
I am not capable of doing this.
So it's obviously May.
It has to be May, because it can't be me.
Mm-hmm. And you know how visions in the Force are. It's very like cloudy kind of. So I think it definitely sets herself up as thinking it's May. So Chimera kind of has a discussion like wanting OSHA to train with him. He clearly can see her power. Yeah. And he's very interested, I think. Yeah. So after that, we lead to Sol and May. It picks up with Sol telling May, he's kind of, you can assume he's just told her the events of the flashback we saw last week. And Sol kind of stands by what they did with investigating and saying, like, it was justified. There was a divergence. We'll talk more about that later. He didn't think the girls were safe. Are you surprised by his doubling down on, like, no, we were right?
No. I think he's convinced himself at this point. He's had 16 years to convince himself what he did was right. He's not going to say, whoops, I was wrong. No, he's doubling down.
And I think, as we've talked about the last, entirety of the series, this definitely is in some sort of gray area where it's like, maybe they were right to investigate, but there are clearly a series of mistakes made. Right. So it's like the fact that Sol is so, no, we were right, and May is so, no, not at all. I thought they had kind of like a kids pointing a finger at each other sort of thing.
It really was.
Because she was like, you killed my mother. And he's like, you started a fire. It was very, I love Sol. But it was like, oh my God, call Sol.
I loved how Sol did point out, you locked the people in there anyway.
Yep. It was very almost petty argument, but I felt like these two characters needed to have this discussion, but I don't think either of them left the discussion with what they needed to out of it, which is unfortunate. Because I think if Sol was able to make a connection to May, he may not have ended the way that he did.
We'll see.
And it's interesting because Sol seems to be able to make strong connections to people, but it maybe his actions have just made that connection not possible.
Right. And May watched.
Yeah.
May watched him stab her mother.
Yeah, that'll do it, won't it?
It's not going to help.
Not going to go away quickly. But one thing that I did like was that Sol said, and we had talked about whether or not Sol really cared about May, and his response, I think, was genuine. He says he doesn't regret intervening, but what he regrets is that he wasn't able to save both May and Osha.
Yes.
And I do think that is true.
Oh, I agree.
Which I thought maybe last week it wasn't portraying it as much as he did really want to save them both. But I thought it was good that he really did seem legitimately remorseful for that. Any other thoughts on that? I know you were kind of like Sol doesn't care about May last week.
From that point of view, he didn't.
and maybe he over time developed more of like oh my god, what a mistake that was.
Did he care about saving May, or does he have guilt for not being able to save May?
Or let me rephrase, both.
Does he have guilt that May survived?
I don't think. I think he's relieved she survived.
I think it's the opposite. I think he wishes she was dead.
I think that's very complicated, but I don't.
For me, wishes she was dead. If it would
wishes she had never.
It would be a lot easier for Sol if May did not survive.
None of this would have happened. None of the events of the show would have happened. Well, which I guess.
Let's not go that far. Osha still left the Jedi Order.
I guess what I mean is like the plot to kill the 4 Jedi wouldn't have happened, but yeah. It's very
complicated.
It's
Sol's
complicated,
guy.
And this leads to Sol's kind of plan. And I think for me, maybe I'm wanting it to be more noble. His plan is to essentially get the Jedi to Brendok with May and Osha there. And I think he kind of knows Osha's going to come to him.
Yeah.
So get them to Brendok and essentially use them as proof of avergence. Do you think this was to help justify what happened on Brendok?
Absolutely. He wanted to clear his name.
I think that's right. And do you think it would have if it was... I think I agree with you.
Chimera says a line a little bit later in the show that really made me think how this would have gone. So when we get there...
Okay.
Or
I don't know if I have the line written down. Would you like to just fire away?
At one point when Sol does turn on his transmitter and the Jedi go to Brendok, Chimera and Osha are standing there, and we see the ship fly over, and Chimera makes the quip, well, they're not here for me.
It's true. And they
were
weren't.
They together at that point? Were Osha...
I think Sol and Chimera were.
Sol and Chimera, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Chimera saying they're not here for me was pretty telling.
So after Sol kind of unveils his plan to May, he starts to... And Sol throughout this series has been the master of starting to say something and then for some reason not getting able to finish it. Starts to tell May that Osha isn't your twin. She's not even your sister. And then May escapes.
Yes.
I was like, oh.
Using Pip.
Which
she called Pip.
You can see her throughout the episode starting to form the bond with Pip. I think highlighting that Osha and May there's more to them being like the same person, I feel like. And kind of like their circumstances determine what had happened to them previously. So May ends up escaping the ship, and she's able to get into like a smaller escape ship. I do want to say a brief thing. The people on the internet that like to be mad about things were mad that May said, "See you in hell." Would you like to enlighten everyone who probably, if you're listening to us, already know why is that not a problem, Dan?
This is not the first mention of hell in Star Wars.
I don't even think it's the second.
Yeah, the first one took place in Empire Strikes Back was it on Hoth?
It was on Hoth.
On Hoth.
Spoken by Han Solo.
Yep.
So yeah, not a problem, not poor writing.
He did shoot first, too.
He did shoot first.
I don't know if I've ever said my stance on that, but there it is.
McClunky, you know about that one?
No.
The last change George Lucas made to the original trilogy before selling it to Disney was making Greedo, as he was getting shot, say McClunky. I don't know. That's a gift from the maker.
Probably sounds close to Mickey.
That's kind of funny. So anyway, see you in hell is not a problem. May escapes, and then we have this cool ship chase. We hadn't gotten any ship action,
And we knew this ship chase would happen. It was in the trailer.
Too much was revealed in the trailer, but we can talk about that later.
Was it?
I think there were the light whip didn't need to be in the trailer. The ship chase didn't need to be in the trailer.
Light whip was cool.
We didn't need to see Torben and Konaka fighting in the trailer.
It was cool.
It was cool, but I feel like if you're gonna watch this anyway, like you kind of know. But anyway, that's an aside.
But it makes you want to watch it. Why am I seeing two Jedi fighting?
I think the real thing is that's a Wookiee Jedi.
When they're billing a Wookiee Jedi and then they're fighting.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back on track.
Anyway, so we have this ship chase. It's within one of the rings of one of the moons. I thought it was so cool how there was like a top layer and a bottom layer, and like there's like the pillars in between them. I don't know what I expected it to look like, but I thought it was really cool.
Did you find it interesting that May knew there was a inlet between them?
It seemed like she knew. I didn't really think much about it, but I think maybe it speaks to her connection to the planet, because I think this is like the blue moon of the I like that beer. The blue moon of the the Acolyte logo.
Yeah.
That has to do with the Ascension. I thought there was going to be some sort of overlap, and it was going to just happen to be like the Ascension Day.
Yeah.
And I was like, kind of glad. I feel like that would have been a little cheesy.
It would have been.
I don't think we're done with Brendock yet, but we'll get there. Anyway, I'm tilting my hand about wanting more. But I thought the ship chase was really cool. The format for it was cool. And how May was like, he can't fit in here. She's flying in the middle. And then Sol just crashes his ship into it. Mm-hmm. I think at this point, Sol's kind of erratic.
Well, Sol was going to do something that the Jedi don't do.
And this is, I have several questions that are going to come up here. So let me describe the scene. And then I just want to ask you what you think before I try to rationalize what I think is going to happen. So Sol locks on to May. And then as this is happening, he's about to push the button, and Basil pulls cables out before he can shoot, essentially sending May and Sol crashing to Brendock. Mm-hmm. Two questions. First, what do you think Sol was planning on doing? Was he like going to stun the ship or like make it so it stopped moving? So
no, he was going to shoot it.
See, I don't think he was going to shoot her.
I think he was going to shoot her.
He needs her to prove everything with the Virgins.
He was going to shoot her down in hopes that she survived it.
See,
because look, there's two sides to this. He shoots her down and she survives, and he can prove there's an emergence. Shoots her down and she dies. I caught the murderer.
See, I just don't know. That seems out of character for Sol for me.
But remember, the walls are coming in on Sol.
It's true.
He knows he's getting erratic, like you said.
Well, use my own words against me, why don't you?
I have a good habit of that.
I know you do. And I have a habit of speaking freely with little thought behind it, which is a dangerous combination.
Anyway, I think, like you said, Sol was being erratic. We have May, who was going... Do you think she would have gone to Brendock if she did not get sent into...
I think she had to, because she said, I wish this thing had a hyperdrive. So that thing didn't have a hyperdrive, whatever escape craft she was in.
Yes.
So I think she needed to go there to communicate. I don't know quite what her plan was, but I think it was just to get away from Sol.
Yes.
I still don't like the idea that Sol was trying to kill her. He could have tried to shoot her. I don't think he was trying to kill her.
I think he was trying to shoot her ship down.
I don't hate that idea. So then that brings us to the second question is, what was Basil doing? Do you think he was just trying to stop Sol from making an un-Jedi move?
Yes.
Though that would jeopardize himself and Sol?
I think Basil knew what he was pulling out.
I agree. I don't think it was random.
No, and I think he knew that if he pulled it out, they would not die.
Yeah, and I've seen people questioning like what exactly Basil's motivations were throughout the show. And whenever he shows up, people are confused because they can't directly talk to him. And I do kind of wish that Basil could speak.
Well, he could.
I wish that Basil speaking a different language was not used as a Yord joke. You like that better?
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around it.
I think if he... Yord humor. Anyway, I'm trying to... I don't know. I wish that he could have communicated more clearly, but I like what he did.
I agree. I think I think Basil was saving Sol from himself.
Basil consistently is doing the Jedi-ish thing.
Right. And he's not even a Jedi.
Not even a Jedi.
They treat him like dirt.
He's like a contractor.
Not even that. He's the tracker.
I almost thought that she was talking about something like digital.
No.
No, and I was like, oh my God, Basil. Poor Basil. Anyway.
But that also, one last little tiny thing.
Go ahead.
Speaks to Yord's character. Calling it by its name.
Mm-hmm.
Calling Basil by its name.
Yeah. And knowing Basil's language, of course, too.
Yeah.
I miss Yord. And we'll talk about that later. But anyway, we catch up with Vernestra, and she is having a meeting with Senator Rayencourt. And we have Rayencourt who kind of hears about the murder investigation. He asked Vernestra why she didn't inform the Senate, and Vernestra kind of slips and said there were multiple murders. The second time, or the first of two times, Vernestra kind of like overshares in this episode, which I don't know if there's significance to that, but we can talk about it the second time.
Mm-hmm.
I love the character of Rayencourt. For as much as I love the Jedi, I think we have to get the Jedi from the place that they are in the High Republic books to the place, and they're kind of on a gradual kind of descent. But this is getting to the political aspect of it that we see in the prequels.
Rayencourt drops the hardest line of the series in this exchange.
Which one is that? I have some written down, but I want to hear what you think.
When Vernestra makes a comment like, it basically says, "Why are you making this personal?" And he says, "What do you think?" And she said, "In my honest opinion, yes." Then he said, "Well, so because you said it, here's my honest opinion."
Mm-hmm.
And he basically went off on the Jedi, saying like, "Who are you to decide with your cultish norms, trying to control the most uncontrollable things in the universe?"
And your head goes Force at first, right?
And Vernestra says like the Force. It's like, we don't control the Force, merely try and work around. He goes, "No, emotions," which is 100% the reason the Jedi fell.
And I think that's it. Emotions is exactly what the big thing I want to talk about. And he says, one of you will snap, and who will stop him? I think Mother Anastasia also kind of had a similar line, like, the noble intentions will be the death of you all. And I think there's always going to be people who challenge the Jedi. And the Jedi, like we've talked about, at the end of the day, are the voice of reason. They're always trying to do the right thing. Mm-hmm. But I think we've talked about the problems of the institution. And I think this whole series, everything with the Vernestra's kind of been up to, and her interactions with Rayencourt, highlight the problems, at least the beginnings of the problems with the institution of the Jedi Order.
Yes.
In the prequels.
Yes.
You know, I keep saying prequels, but yes, the time between now and the prequels.
Much like what we're getting with the new other half of the Disney live action, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka. We are seeing the faults with the New Republic. And they're showing us why the New Republic ultimately fails and falls to the First Order. We are seeing the same thing. We are ultimately seeing why the Jedi Order, this once very proud institution, ultimately crumbles.
And these people who are not even involved with it are able to see the cracks in the armor 100 years before the Jedi could see it. So yeah. I thought that Rayencourt was I obviously don't like him. You're not meant to like him, but he's a very interesting character.
Or do you think that you're meant to agree with him?
I think this show is about... I've said this about The Last Jedi, this comparison to The Last Jedi. I think The Last Jedi's challenging the ideas of the Jedi in order to reaffirm them. I think this show is a little different in the sense that they're challenging the Jedi, but I think they're challenging directly challenging Luke's idea was more like in The Last Jedi, more like the whole institution, like the whole ideas of the Jedi just don't even matter anymore. This is basically calling out the problems before they have a chance to rear their head.
Yes.
I feel like. So I don't know. I think maybe you are supposed to agree with him a little, but you don't want to agree with him.
Yeah.
Sorry, I kind of got rambly there.
It's okay.
I love the Jedi. It makes me sad that we're questioning them so much, but I understand it.
You have to.
And I do want to say, it gives me a great opportunity to say, I will always stick up for the Jedi, and I think this show does a good job of highlighting that the Jedi have to make, every single decision they make has to be the right one. And that leaves them with so many opportunities to make the wrong decision.
Yep. Where
the Sith, or the dark side, or whatever, make one decision to do the wrong thing, and they don't have to pay mind to any consequences. It's like playing a video game where you have a choice about good and evil. I'm thinking particularly for me like Infamous 2 or Infamous 1 or any of the Infamous games for PlayStation. Have you ever played them?
I played Infamous 2 on demo at Walmart.
Okay, so it has a good and bad system.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to be the bad side and like attack the pedestrians while you're, fighting rather than to like actively move away from them and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean when I say reaffirming the Jedi. Like they're just easy to pick on because they have to do so many things correctly in order to live up to their ideals.
Yeah.
All right. I could talk about the Jedi for 7 years. You think we should probably move on?
Let's try to move on.
All right. I think we got a little steered off track there.
Just a tad. That's my fault.
No, it's my fault. I started talking about the Jedi. Anyway, we cut back to Chimera and Osha. They begrudgingly agree to kind of travel together, which is kind of where we left them. Chimera wants to find May and continue her training, and he has a ship, and Osha knows where May is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the setup here. And Chimera offers to train her and says, last chance.
Mm-hmm.
I think he means this when he says it here. But I think we'll talk about why that might change later on, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add before we talk about one of the biggest things in this episode?
Just the witty dialogue.
I know.
Osha's like, I'm going to go save May. And Chimera's like, with what ship?
Mm-hmm. They're so flirtatious. And we'll get there too. But I think there is a sort of
friendly banter.
Friendly banter for people who, for someone who killed all of Osha's friends reasonably, Weird. We'll get there. But as they leave the unknown planet, we cut to a cliff and we see this moon.
The safety rails.
And we see... I'm just going to come out and say it. It's not been confirmed by like subtitles or anything because he didn't say anything. It's Darth Plagueis.
Absolutely.
It's Darth Plagueis. I threw my arms in the air. My poor wife was like, what? I paused it. I was like, Plagueis. Oh my God, it's Plagueis. And this is someone who I've not read the Plagueis Legends book, but I know the story. I have always been intrigued by Palpatine's line, have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis Wise and all that? So getting to actually see this story play out intrigues me. And while this little appearance is all we get, I was just elated. What did you think about it?
It was crazy. And I can see why people who haven't really delved into the legends be like, oh, that's a cool guy. Mm-hmm. And then the people who with the legends background are freaking out with good and bad. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was really cool. And I think it's very appropriate.
I know.
All things considered, very appropriate.
And very tastefully done. I feel like it, in the hands of someone who doesn't care about Star Wars as much. Mm-hmm. I will say that Leslie Headland, you can tell, was very careful about how she used things like this. It was very well integrated where it's not too much. It's very subtle to the point where like I called my dad after the episode was over and I was like, what did you think? Wow, Darth Plagueis. He's like, what I missed. I think he was like on his phone or something. Like you have to go back. He's like, oh, look at that. It was pretty funny. But I have 3 scenarios laid out here. I'm going to say them. I want you to tell me what you think. And I'll tell you my thoughts after you speak. So scenario 1, Plagueis is Chimera's master, and he knows about him recruiting an acolyte. For example, Palpatine knowing about Dooku and Ventress.
Right.
Option 2, Chimera's recruiting an apprentice to overtake Plagueis in secret, though not that well if this is the case. And this would be more like the Force Unleashed situation where Vader's training Starkiller. Mm-hmm. Legends. See, I can do legends. And the last one is Chimera's Plagueis' master. Which scenario do you think is most likely?
Can I throw out a 4th scenario?
Of course.
You and I briefly discussed this earlier. Mm-hmm. What if Chimera and Plagueis don't interact? What if they don't know each other? What if Chimera is the fallen Jedi that we know he is, who identified with the Sith ideals and wanted to just restart the Sith? Because
he didn't know that there was...
As we've known, they've been extinct for 900 years. And Plagueis is there like, oh, who's on our turf? Potentially, is he there to recruit Chimera? I don't think he's Plagueis' master. I will say.
Okay, so you ruled out option 3. So we've got your surprise 4th option of they're entirely separate but trying to do the same thing.
think it's option 1.
You think it's option? I think it's option 1 too. I organized them in terms of what I thought was most likely to least likely.
It's most likely Chimere may be the Acolyte at this point.
It's like I think the hierarchy though is Plagueis is the big
Plagueis,
one.
Chimere,
Moshe. Yes, I like that. So I think Plagueis is something we could talk about more when we do our episode recapping the whole series.
Mm-hmm.
But anything else to add on him for the time being?
No, looked cool.
Very cool. Creepy. Real creepy. And that species, like in the Banking Clan and Attack of the Clones, looks a little less intimidating.
Yeah.
I think they did some tweaking to the design to really go with the creepy.
Yes.
I loved it. Kind of look like Ebony Maw. Anyway, we are cutting back to everyone kind of getting to Brendock. It's a whole bunch of little scenes. I will say, as this is happening, I wanted to say I loved coming back to Brendock because it kind of gave us some clarification and answers to questions I thought we were just going to leave in the flashbacks and not actually get answers to. What did you think about returning to Brendock? Because I didn't have it in my mind that we were going back to Brendock.
It made a lot of sense when you think about it.
100%.
Everything, this whole story, all the branches, many, many branches of this story, diverge from Brendock and diverge from that night.
Mm-hmm.
So it only makes sense that everything should come full circle and end at Brendock.
I completely agree with you. It was very. I really liked it. Like it allowed us to do things like understand how May survived.
Yeah.
Like I just little things like that they could kind of casually answer. I really enjoyed. But so we're getting to Brendock. Sol sends a message to the Jedi to let him know where he is. We have May enter the way she exited.
Yeah.
Through the tube because we see her climbing up, and we have Chimere and Osha initially attending to take the elevator. But except for Chimere can teleport. What's the deal with that?
Can he teleport? Or
what was he doing?
Just quick?
Are you saying he's using Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan from the Phantom Menace force speed?
I did see force speed in this episode, I'm pretty sure. Used by him during the fight scene with
Sol?
With Sol. I feel like he used force speed.
Are you saying that the slow-mo stuff wasn't actually slow-mo?
He was in slow-mo. Sometimes there was a slow-mo fight, and then he would just be a little bit faster.
I don't mind that idea of him.
Again, that's some pretty crackpot stuff.
It is. I don't mind it though.
I think he climbed. I really do.
Quickly?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. Force weird. Go ahead.
We know he can levitate. We've seen him levitate. Now, do I think he
magnetoed up there? No, probably not. Maybe he did series of jumps or something.
It was probably whatchamacallit?
Yeah, whatchamacallit?
Oh, Uncharted. Just
Nathan Drake and right up. I love it. So yeah, we kind of have everyone getting set up to be where they need to be for the conclusion here. Mm-hmm. And then we have cut back to Vernestra in the temple, and she's trying to reach someone to get a meeting in an unusual way. We can come back to that. But she's interrupted by one of my least favorite new characters in the show, Mog, the incompetent intern.
Is he incompetent?
I think he seems just fed up.
I think Mog's dealing with Vernestra's shady stuff. And she's telling him to go do something shady, and he's like, okay.
Maybe I guess I can relate with Mog a little.
Just a tad.
But, so basically saying they found Sol, and Vernestra's like, get as many Jedi as you can without raising an alarm. We're going.
That's a kill squad.
Yeah.
That's a kill squad.
And again, I do think Vernestra knows there's more to it than Sol doing this.
Yes.
But I think she wants as many eyes there as she can to essentially squash this. I think she is, at this point, I think she's prepared to frame Sol.
I think she's fully ready to go kill Sol. Not even frame Sol, to kill Sol.
Yeah.
In an effort to frame him.
Yes.
Sol was not, I do not think at this point, at least to myself, Sol is not making it off Brendock.
No, I think when she saw that he was, and we'll get there, when he had been killed, I think she was probably like, oh my, how lucky I am. Because she didn't have to do it herself.
I think she would have.
I do. Well, yes, I do. But anyway, we cut back to Sol exploring the Brendock base, and he gets to where, the bridge where he dropped him. And I thought it was, you can tell he was shaken.
Sol was taking a victory lap.
It was not a victory lap. But you could see that he was just clearly, shaken by it.
Yes.
I think he really regrets two things from that night. I think he regrets killing Mother Anastasia, which he does end up apologizing for, and I think he really regrets dropping May.
Yeah.
Which, it's nice to see.
If he didn't split, do you think he could have saved them both?
I don't think he could have saved them both. I don't know that, like I saw someone say, like, well, you know, we saw a bunch of people say, why didn't he just pick up the girls? But, like, you think about, I saw someone, I wish I could remember who had said this, but, like, in Attack of the Clones, Dooku or Yoda, like, stops the giant pillar from falling on Anakin and Obi-Wan. He doesn't pull Anakin and Obi-Wan out.
Right.
It's like instinct sort of thing. So I don't think in that situation,
it's easier to stop an object than it is just to do a person.
Yes, and I think he, let me think about how I want to phrase this. I think he could not have saved them at that moment in time in his frame of mind.
Right, and it makes sense. You run up, the bridge is collapsing. What do? You try and fix the bridge.
Yep. To save the kids.
Yep.
Could he have said, like, jump? But he was clearly struggling. So I think, yeah. And I was happy to see him being shaken by the fact that he could handle, or, like, couldn't have saved them both. Mm-hmm. I also thought that he was going to be a little out of it for the fight that you kind of knew was coming. Mm-hmm. I knew I didn't know who was going to be involved in the fight, but I had a feeling it was going to be a fight. And I was like, oh my God, is this how Soul's going to go? He's not going to be able to hang. But let's talk about that fight. So we have Chimera kind of appear. I thought this fight was so cool. One of the things that I have written down that I loved was the slow motion aspect of it. Because that's not something we've really seen before in Star Wars. I like that it gave you, like, a second to get these, like, stills that, like, you might want to print out and hang on your wall, like, of these different fights.
Yeah.
I thought it was so cool. One thing that I also wanted to point out is Saul's mixture of lightsaber and hand-to-hand combat. I like how he, like, how dramatically he, like, put his lightsaber on his belt, and he'd, like, pull it out as if it was like a samurai sword. I thought it was so different from any Jedi we've ever seen.
And then Chimera really using his unique lightsaber to his advantage.
Oh, it was. I mean, we saw it before, and I was still like, oh, when he pulled it out.
And I didn't realize it was shorter than the other one.
The Shodo, like Ahsoka had.
Yeah,
so cool. Oh my God! And then my favorite moment I want to talk about was when I think we had watched this together at work.
Throwing the.
Anytime you see a lightsaber throw in live action, I think it's cool. And where's the first time we saw that in live action, Dan? Your favorite movie?
Rogue One.
Episode 6.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, Vader throws it. And the reason I bring that up is because this has come a long way from Vader. It looks like he just kind of, like, chucked a stick, and it doesn't have the cool spinning.
Yeah.
So I think we've come a long way from that.
Now that I can picture it, he threw it, it cut the catwalk down.
Yeah. I'm sorry. We can cut that if you want.
No, it's okay. I just forgot.
But no. This is all to say, this was like a video game throw.
And Chimera did something we didn't see anybody else who threw it do.
What?
He tried to converge on it.
Yeah, he did. He got up
and came in to catch them
and to, like, punch Soul.
Right.
And then I don't
think he was going to punch Soul.
Stab.
Decapitate.
Yeah, but I thought it was so Jedi of Soul to, like, just deflect all of it with, like, a big force push.
And then they deceived us and did a happy music right there.
Yeah, they did. They did a lot of happy music with Soul's fighting. I was very nervous this whole fight.
I was too. I was nervous until that point, and they did it. They did the upbeat music. Like, Soul's gonna beat him.
Mm-hmm. And I really want to emphasize here that I was happy that Soul had a moment to be the awesome Jedi that we want him to be. Mm-hmm. He can do. We've discussed all throughout the series. He can do the right thing.
Yes.
He knows what the right thing to do is, and he's clearly handling his own, which I love that like, the last time he was very, like, frazzled. Mm-hmm. You could tell he kind of, like, he knew what was coming this time. He could handle it, and I like seeing that. Yeah. And he clearly is, we'll talk about it a little later, well respected in the Jedi Order.
Yes.
Enough. So we'll get there when I talk about that. But we see Osha and May reunite in the last place that they had seen each other as children. No, that's not true. I lied. We see him in Osha's room or May's room or both their rooms. I don't know.
Yeah.
We see them unite there, and...
Can I talk about something there
Sure.
real quick? We see them unite.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to hammer home the clothing aspect of it.
Yes.
Osha changed, and she was in a dark outfit for this part.
It's very dark gray.
Very dark gray.
And
May was in the white civilian attire. And during the scene, Osha was in the dark doorway in the dark clothes, and May was at
by the light,
the lighted backdrop in the all white.
Oh no, this is something that I had written down, so I'm happy you said it.
Yeah,
it's so stark, and to match this, so let's put a pin in that for like 2 seconds. We have May essentially telling Osha the truth about Soul killing Mother Anastasia. She doesn't believe her, and we see Osha kind of match with her emotions, match the visual appearance she had.
Yeah.
And we have May, who's very, very calm throughout this. It's like the characters did a complete 180, each of them.
They did. And we finally get to hear why Osha left the Jedi Order.
I know.
In her own words.
Go ahead.
Osha said, I could not deal with the anger and the grief that you caused me.
Uh-huh. Which I like that it was her decision.
Right. Because they were trying to set up Indara the whole time.
Uh-huh. Poor Indara.
Yeah.
I wish we got more of her. It's okay. But yeah,
she went out on top.
She did. She saved a civilian. But it was very interesting to see this fight too, because they, on top of their like role reversal, I thought it was so cool how they had like their identical moves because they're the same person, more or less. We'll come to find out. I thought it was very cool.
Yes.
Unlike, again, there's a lot in this episode that was unlike any Star Wars fight we've seen before.
And it was mimicking the other simultaneous fight
Mm-hmm.
with that really cool scene.
Are we going to do the transition now?
Is there anything else?
No, I'm good here. Go ahead.
Very cool. Star Wars, known for their transition. Osha, May both do a high leg kick. Very much so. Karate Kid, Rocky 3. You know if you know, you know. They go to do the same move at the same time, and then it cuts to the lightsabers interlocking. I'm like, that's sweet. Really symbolizing the light versus the dark in both fights.
Oh no, it's so cool. And then it's basically, long story short, May makes her way to the fight. Was Osha knocked out? What happened?
I don't remember.
I'm struggling to remember. Anyway, Osha
took a detour.
Yeah. So May is, makes her way to where Soul and Chimera are fighting. And we see Soul Soul won the fight. He broke Chimera's lightsaber.
Yes.
And at this point, Soul's lightsaber also breaks, though. Right? At this point? If that happened? Or no, it was after May kind of like attacks him and it like slams on the ground and it breaks. So then we have both, I think we see at this point, Chimera's red kyber crystal exposed in his lightsaber. Soul's blue kyber crystal exposed. And one thing I want to point out is when Chimera had cut Kalnaka's lightsaber, when Jeki was using it, you saw the crystal. I think this is a great nonverbal way of explaining that this is how lightsabers work to people who aren't familiar with the idea of a kyber crystal. Mm-hmm. So we see both. It's kind of foreshadowing it. And interestingly, Chimera's kind of like, you can kill him. Go ahead. I'm going to complete your mission. I think Chimera's kind of like, yeah, Osha told me no. Let's get May to do it. And she refuses to kill Soul, but she wants him to admit what he'd done and, face the consequences formally of his actions.
Yes. And do you think Soul was content with that?
Yes. I think he like I said, or like you said, I think he does believe he's right. Mm-hmm. I think he legitimately 100% believes he's right. And he tries to, again, double down and explain why what they did was right.
Yeah.
And, they really were right for intervening. And he kind of then starts to provide his thoughts on what he got cut off from telling her on the ship, is that he thinks Mother Anastasia was able to create life and kind of split. The nuances here are lost, but more or less split one person into two. So Osha and May are not two people.
Yeah, is
the theory of Soul's throwing out through the power of the Virgins, and you want to believe the dark side maybe a little here. Soul's
justifying the murder of an innocent woman.
No.
That's
no.
Throughout the dark side there.
Mother Coral says, and I quote, what happens if the Jedi find out how you created them? So anyway, we kind of, as this is happening, he's saying, like, you're the same person. You're not twins. You're not sisters. Chimera's kind of like giving him a little, first of all, he's just kind of standing there vibing.
Yeah.
Then he kind of gets a little look on his face like, what's this about? I got to go tell Darth Plagueis about this.
Like, I got to take notes.
He's probably like, hang on.
Can you say that again, but a little bit slower? Can you really explain?
Virgins.
Is that a G?
So yeah, I think,
and I would not have put it past his character to do that.
I know. And do you think that this and we'll kind of get there. Do you think that this show could ultimately get to, assuming we get more of it, attacking some questions about like Anakin's creation?
100%. You don't show Plagueis. You don't talk about this Force birth, all of this, and just be like, Anakin's dad went to get milk.
I agree with you completely, but Osha ends up catching up from whatever happened to her. Apologies for us not remembering that detail. There was a lot happening.
There was.
But Osha catches up, and May forces Soul to tell Osha what happened. And Osha's asking and asking and asking.
Well, remember, Osha wasn't there at first.
No, it was just...
She walked up to Soul in his little middle of his monologue,
mm-hmm.
and then Osha overhears it and then was like, is it true?
Mm-hmm. And he admits it, and she, is understandably upset and asks why, if it was like the right thing. He tries to like rationalize, and she says, "Why didn't you tell her me? Why didn't you tell me if it wasn't the right thing?" And he starts to say, get very emotional and start to say that he loved her, which the Jedi aren't too keen on that concept.
No.
Which again, I think there's some more nuance to that than the Jedi of the prequels.
Yeah.
And this. Specifically Jedi prequels, because the High Republic are a little more fluid on that.
Mm-hmm.
Little. But I think maybe they weren't right to have this view, but that is something a Jedi shouldn't say.
Right.
And before he can get the end of the word love out, he's being force choked. Did you immediately think it was Osha?
But it was Chimera.
Me too. So we've seen Osha struggle to use the force throughout this entire series, and not only is she using it, it's not like she's like we saw Sabine and Ahsoka struggle to use the force.
Mm-hmm.
And the climactic moment was using the Force to grab the lightsaber.
She grabbed something, all right.
She grabbed Soul's windpipes. I do want to use this as an opportunity, and this is something that Star Wars Explained had talked about in his review. There are so many thematic ties to all different areas of Star Wars in this show. Mm-hmm. Connections to the originals, connections to the sequels, connections to the shows. I think it is what, for me, makes this, like the thematic ideas on top of the visuals, make this really feel Star Warsy to me.
Yeah, I agree.
And I love it. That's an aside, but
yeah,
go ahead.
Just showing how strong Osha was.
Seriously, out of nowhere.
Every time we see force chokes, we usually see, like, everybody knows that the trademark Darth Vader sticking his hand out. Her hand was at her side.
Uh-huh.
She just used, like, 3 or 4 fingers.
And it seemed like she kind of was not going... Like, she wasn't going in for the kill right away. She was just kind of...
making him suffer.
Yes. So... that happens. She picks up Soul's lightsaber, and in what I cannot believe that we saw on screen, this was one of my favorite things that I've seen in a while. She picked up Soul's lightsaber, and we can start to see his blue kyber crystal turn red.
Yes.
For those that aren't familiar, this is the concept of kyber crystal bleeding. It was introduced in the Darth Vader comics. It was seen in the Rise of Kylo Ren comic, and visually on screen in Jedi Survivor.
I think it was in Ahsoka too. The Ahsoka book or Ahsoka comics.
Ahsoka purifies the Inquisitor crystals.
But same idea.
We're getting...
Fair enough.
We can talk about that in a second. But it was also seen in Jedi Survivor. But this is the first time it's seen in live action.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the concept of a Jedi... red is not a natural color for a kyber crystal. So the only way to get one is to take the lightsaber of a Jedi for a Sith and to... kill that Jedi. It's like a Sith rite of passage. Kill the Jedi, take their crystal, and then purify or bleed it. Mm-hmm. And that creates the red lightsaber, which we see here. I do want to comment on Ahsoka. It's from the Ahsoka book. She takes the bled crystals of an Inquisitor and then purifies them to make them white.
Fair enough.
So it's like
the
opposite of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the first time bleeding has been seen on screen, which is incredible. And as this is happening, Osha kills Soul, and even as she's killing him with force choke, he says it's okay. He's still comforting her even as he's dying.
Yeah.
You can just tell he really cares about her. What I have in my notes here is a frowny face, because if you've listened to us for a while about this, I love Soul a lot. Dan loves Soul too, but I love Soul a lot, and I knew it was coming.
I didn't send the backs of the cereal boxes in to get to become an official member of the Soul Patrol. Joey has.
I am hashtag Soul Patrol, but I had a feeling he was going to go, but this was so much more like
Gruesome.
like tragic, like old school, like you're reading it for English class, tragic. Like he is killed by the daughter of the person he killed in the exact same spot. It was brutal. It made me sad.
Chimere's proud dad over there.
And I think this whole time Chimere's like, ooh.
So I didn't have to teach her that.
No, she did that herself.
Own.
May's the defective one after all.
You're good, May.
Seriously, Did you think that it was karma? Like, did you feel like it was?
I think it came full circle.
I'm
not going to say he deserved it.
I like that, and I don't think. Like, do you think he was at peace? I mean, obviously, you can't really be much at peace when someone's choking you. But do you feel like he was like, "I deserve this"?
Yes,
I agree.
I still think he thinks he's right,
and I think to a certain extent, there's some value in him and what they were doing on Brendock. We can disagree. We're going to disagree on this for the rest of our lives, I think. But I think that's part of the point. There's no right answer here.
The right answer is you don't kill people.
Yes, but like we talked about it, that was a series of events. Particularly, like, I think Mother Coral and Torben were like, you know, maybe Saul is a tank of gasoline. Mother Coral and Torben were like a match. I think their escalation is what caused all these events to happen.
Yeah.
And not saying Saul didn't do something wrong. He even apologizes to Osha for it.
But not to May.
Listen, he's going through it right now.
He went through it last night.
Oh my God. So anyway, we see Vernestra land.
This is sweet.
And it is sweet. The Vernestra and the other Jedi land, and her and Chimere immediately sense one another. It's like striking how fast they sense one another. And Chimere looks terrified. And Vernestra says, you're alive?
And Chimere throws his helmet on.
Yes.
His sensory deprivation helmet, which I think could have two meanings. A, he's trying to not let her in his head.
Mm-hmm.
And B, doesn't want her to see his face.
I think we've proven that, the show has said, like, he put the helmet on to deprive him, or like, he told Saul he couldn't take the helmet off because he didn't want him in his head. So yeah. I think it is kind of like a Professor X Magneto sort of situation. Mm-hmm. Like Magneto's helmet keeps Professor X out. And yes, I don't think he wants to see her. He doesn't want her to see him, and he wants to keep her out of his head. He clearly is terrified.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the theories that everyone was throwing around when we saw Chimere's scars. It could be from a light whip. So I think we learn eventually that Vernestra used to be Chimere's master.
Yep.
I think she might have thought she killed him.
I think she thought she did kill him.
And that's kind of crazy.
And again, but it's also like, now I see why he went to the dark side.
Maybe a little. So, like you said, puts his helmet on, runs away real quickly, and as the Jedi arrive in the fortress, Vernestra starts to kind of sense everything that happened. And it's like an intermix of what happened 16 years ago and what happened now. So Vernestra, at this point, knows exactly what happened. Between everything she's known about the situation and what she's been able to piece together through the Force, she gets it. Like, yeah. She knows exactly what happened. And let me check my notes real quick. We'll kind of hop back to May and Ocean now. They're kind of escaping. We learn how May survived, like I said, through the tube. They have a nice little conversation under the Boonta tree, which again kind of brings it all. Everything kind of happens full circle.
Right.
We see them for the first time as kids there. We see them technically, so as far as we know, for the completion of season 1. We see them the last time they see each other under the Boonta tree. So again, like George Lucas said, it's poetry. It rhymes.
It does.
But we see Chimere find them, and he says, "If I can find you, the Jedi can find you." And takes her takes Darth Osha's soul lightsaber.
Yeah.
This is getting complicated now with my euphemisms. But long story short, basically the twins are like, "We're going to tell the Jedi." And he's like, "You really think that's a good idea?" And he kind of convinces them. Or maybe I think it's a mix of them thinking it and them, kind of knowing it probably wouldn't go well for them.
Mm-hmm.
They decide that Chimere is going to attempt to.
He said, "I don't know if I can, but I can try."
He can attempt to wipe her mind, and May basically says Osha, and that would also have Osha basically saying, "Let May go, I'll come train with you."
Mm-hmm.
And May says, "Osha, if that's what you want, okay." So they hug, they recite their little rhyme, Power of Two and all that. And Chimera starts to twist his hand, and you see her start to forget the rhyme.
Mm-hmm. Literally turning back the clock.
I know, like with his hand. It was very cool. And I did want to point out, again, wish I could remember where I saw this from on Twitter, but Chimera, earlier in the episode when he was pretending to be the apothecary worker, he said something like, I think to Saul, he's like, don't do your mind wipe thing on me.
Yep.
So crazy. The foreshadowing is insane in this show. But, so yeah, that's kind of where we leave it. May's mind is wiped at the Bunta tree. They are, Saul, God, see, I wanted to come back to Saul. Chimera and Osha leave, and what we do get back to Saul is Vernestra. We essentially learn that, Vernestra has framed Saul.
Yes.
We'll get there in a second, because I do want to talk about the conversation between Vernestra and May, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
May's mind is clearly wiped. We essentially find out that her mind is wiped to the events that we saw in the flashbacks of 16 years ago.
Almost.
And just about, she remembers...
Almost everything.
She remembers looking for Osha. She remembers looking for a girl.
She remembers looking for somebody.
Yeah. Is it a girl?
I think so.
But yeah, no. So I think it's spotty. I think this is going to be... It seems like it's set up in a way where it can be undone. Maybe.
It's all coming back to her.
Slowly.
Like the Celine Dion song.
Oh my god. So we see Vernestra talking about how Saul was a kind, compassionate man and a great Jedi, but his judgment was clouded by his love for her sister. Mm-hmm. This is the second time we see Vernestra kind of slip.
Yeah. And
maybe give more information than she should have.
Yes.
Is there something to this? They're clearly showing us this. And everything that Leslie Headland seems to be doing in the show is intentional.
Well, remember, May said the whole reason we got to Mind Wipe is they're going to use me to get to you. Mm-hmm. So I think Vernestra is trying to lead May into giving up Osha at this point.
You think it was intentional that she said Osha?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I'm just writing Vernestra off as crazy.
I think Vernestra is trying to get her to slip. Mm-hmm. And then I think Vernestra does come to realize, like, there's nothing there to slip on. Uh-huh. But I think Vernestra is really just trying to feed into it.
And I think she really feels bad. And I think she does view May as a pawn. An example, not a pawn. I think Vernestra views May as like a worst case scenario for when the Jedi's actions go wrong.
Yeah.
You can tell. I don't think she thinks she's a pawn.
I think she thinks she's a pawn. She said she's a pawn.
I think she is right to take her in and question her, but I don't think that she thinks she's a pawn.
She said it earlier.
What did she say?
She said she could be part of a larger plot that she has no idea of. This is before they sent...
But I'm talking about right now, knowing everything she knows. I don't think that she thinks she's a pawn. I think she has great compassion for her based on how her life was shaken up by the actions of the Jedi.
I'll concede that.
Okay. I feel like we're talking about two different things.
I think it's intertwined, but we'll move on.
All right. So that gets us to Vernestra's Senate meeting. And this is where we do learn that she blames everything on Saul, which for my wife and I got an enormous... you called this a while ago. I think as soon as they were investigating everything on Kofar a few episodes ago. And I was like, no, I don't want it. And it's what happened. It's so sad. And you can see her, they show her like leaning in. And we saw Chimera looking at her when he was like kind of hiding from her on Brendok. We see her like lean down, and we learn that what she whispers to him is, I'm sorry. Yeah. Because you can tell they were friends. Yeah. From their interactions. And from her like attitude here.
Vernestra and Dara and Sol going on cantina dates.
I could see that working. Torben didn't want to go.
Torben's like, do I have to?
Torben just, I didn't know.
Torben's like, Torben's like, Mom, you can't pause an online game.
That is Torben. Oh man, so that happened, and we learned that a few things. We learned that Vernestra gave Saul a traditional Jedi funeral pyre, which I thought was nice.
Yes.
I think it goes to show you that she believes that he is a good Jedi at heart, despite his mistakes, which I liked. And then we also learned that the Senate will be auditing the Jedi after learning about all this immediately. And I think this is going to start to, again, show the connection between the government and the Jedi, which can lead us directly to... There's the lines drawn between this and the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones and the Sith are so straightforward. I think if we get more of this, the lines can be more fleshed out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you could take what you have here and really just draw, like, get to where you need to for the people.
Yes.
Anything else to add about the Senate meeting?
How do you think that would be received by the general population of the Senate oversight?
I think it would be kind of a... Apologies for the technical difficulties. If you listened a few weeks ago, I had some issues with my cable. I bought a new cable, used it last week, and, I decided to plug in the old cable that clearly worked for a little bit, decided to kick out.
It did. It looks so much better just on the screen.
It does. I apologize again. So we were left off at the general public's perception of the Senate oversight on the Jedi.
Let's even take a step closer. You know how we like to take large steps back. Let's take a step closer.
Uh-huh.
The Senate. How do you think the Senate feels as a group? Because that was like the Senate tribunal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very specific subset of the Senate. How do you think the two parties involved? Do you think there are Jedi who say, yes, we need this? And there are senators saying this is an overstep? Or is the general consensus of like one party, each side has their own opinion and they're going to clash?
I get the impression of Rayancourt being in the minority, but a scary minority that is capable of generating a lot of noise.
Like fear-mongering?
Yes.
Normally I'd agree, except everything he said turns out to be true.
I mean, it's like anxiety. Like, you saw Inside Out 2.
I did.
Spoiler alert if you've seen. It's not even a spoiler. Like, at the beginning, anxiety is helping Riley because she's allowing her to be prepared for things.
Yeah.
But you find that, maybe if anxiety's right 1 out of 10 times, and you just happen to be right on that one thing,
Just happen to be right. Guess the right pitch.
Like
the base is loaded.
Rayancourt is a conspiracy theorist, I believe. And
I disagree.
while one of his conspiracies may be correct,
I disagree with that one.
I think Rayancourt, I think he has very valid concerns, but I think he is more aggressive than he needs to be about them.
But is he too aggressive if he's right?
Again, I don't think he knows he's right.
I disagree. He doesn't define his right or wrong. He could be right tomorrow. He could be right 100 years from now. Spoiler alert. That's the magic number. Or he could be right 200 years from now, 300 years from now. It was bound to happen.
The question I have for you then is, are the Jedi... Would you rather have the Jedi not do the good that they do out of risk of this rather than... Like, I don't think the Senate oversight is going to make things better. I think it'll make things worse.
I think that this really goes back to the Civil War.
I am Team Cap in Civil War.
I'm not.
We can save that discussion for another day then.
Yes. Long story, I think the Senate oversight was necessary to a degree.
To a degree. I think Rayancourt's aggressive and wants a very specific outcome. And I don't think a biased party should be in a position to do a review like that.
I don't think the subject of the review should cover up murders.
Maybe so. But again,
flawed. Say no to that one.
Flawed. Everyone's flawed. Anyway, we cut to Chimera and Osha to save us the pain of having to do more of that.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not you. Don't be sorry. We're coming at it from different perspectives. We should we should put all this into one episode and talk about it. But anyway, we have Chimera and Osha arriving back on the unknown planet, and they kind of stare off into the sunset, and they hold hands around Sol's lightsaber. Definitely flirty throughout the series. I kind of love the idea of a Sith couple. I think it's so cool, and takes the two, like the rule of two, and adds a different meaning to it.
2 becomes 1.
Power of 2. Are you saying Palpatine's their son?
No.
Just kidding, I know.
They're just stronger together.
They are stronger together. No, I think it's a really fun idea. And we obviously know Plagueis has to survive. So what happens amongst these two? I think, obviously, Plagueis isn't going to let this go.
Yes.
Do they leave the Sith?
Well, then it just goes back to, what is this arrangement? Is this a sanctioned...
Dooku Ventress situation?
Where Palpatine clearly knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm. And then he was like, all right. Out, got to cut her.
Yeah.
Too strong. Didn't go well for him.
No. Didn't go well for any of the parties involved.
No, not at all. Except for Ventress. She's fine now. She's a Jedi now.
Oh, yeah. How's Qui-Gon doing?
Well, he's alive.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he died.
Well, she's the one that died. But then she came back inexplicably for the Bad Batch. But it's okay, because we love Ventress.
We do love Ventress.
Anyway, that takes us to the last little nugget, little treat, little dessert that they've left for us, and that is Vernestra. We see who she was trying to request her meeting with. And that was Yoda. I was so excited. It's so fitting that he's here.
Mm-hmm.
I was so... I love it. We know in The Phantom Menace, Yoda knows about the rule of two.
Mm-hmm.
So this could potentially explain that.
Yes.
Like, we obviously...
Does Vernestra know that there's a Sith involved?
I don't think at this point. I think you could jump through hoops eventually, like play this scenario out in your mind if the series weren't to get renewed, which we'll talk about. I think you can jump through those hoops in your mind, but I don't think she immediately thinks Sith.
Yeah.
I don't think the only one that knew about the Sith was Saul.
Mm-hmm.
And he clearly never said it to anyone.
And
so I don't think they have any reason to believe Sith.
And Chimera was absolutely right in what he said.
What do you mean?
It doesn't matter what I'm going to tell you.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell anybody because I'm going to kill you.
And he, do you think that... Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, well, but we'll let it be. But
we'll think of it as soon as we click stop
that's
recording.
definitely it. Apologies again about the technical difficulties. I feel very bad about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm the quiet one. And I'm sure Joey's reverb, my mic picking up Joey was just as loud, if not louder than me.
Well, maybe. I'm a very loud person, but it's okay. So anyway, Yoda, there's some... I haven't gotten to this point in the High Republic, but I know there's some stuff where Yoda kind of helps to cover some stuff up. So I think Vernestra may be going to the right person, maybe.
She's brushing stuff under the rug. Yoda's weaving the rug.
I think maybe, and I think we may get there. And that I thought was a great way to end the season, great way to kind of leave you. It wasn't a cliffhanger, but it left you I feel like the way that this whole episode ended left you wanting more.
Yes.
I think they satisfied. We rattled off at the end of last week our list of things that should happen. Mm-hmm. And I didn't go back and listen to it, but I feel like they ticked a lot of those boxes, if not all of them. Mm-hmm. And I think they left even more questions open, which is exactly what she said she was going to do in the interview, Leslie Headland. Yeah. Which I thought was really interesting. So I want to ask Dan your thoughts about the finale, but we're going to kind of be a little sparse on our thoughts on the series itself, because our next episode is going to be kind of a quick conversation about our thoughts on the Acolyte. So I want you to share your thoughts on the finale. I'll share my thoughts, and then we'll end this episode.
Overall, really enjoyed the finale. Wrapped up the show very well. I really have no complaints. We got to see some cool choreography, fight choreography. We got to see titular Acolyte take her role. Mm-hmm.
Got to see Darth Plagueis, Yoda.
Yeah.
Amazing. I felt a very similar way. Like, I honestly, if you couldn't tell last week, I think I was a little more negative than usual.
You were.
I did not quite love, and you don't have to love something at all or be on the first watch. Mm-hmm. I did not quite love the way that the mystery played out. Like, building up to this, I didn't necessarily satisfy me as much, but seeing the way that they tied it together made me like retroactively like it more.
Yeah.
So I think for me, this kind of resolved some of my issues, smoothed out some of the problems a little. The action was amazing.
It was.
I love a really lightsaber fight. And this was a particularly good one. Mm-hmm. And really just sowing the seeds to connect this to the larger Star Wars universe was fantastic. Loved it. Anything else to add on the season? I'm going to say season finale of The Acolyte.
No. I thought it was pretty good.
Thought it was wonderful. If you are interested in our thoughts on the series as a whole, we will be releasing very soon our breakdown of, just a few of our thoughts on the series, season 1 of The Acolyte as a whole. So please stay tuned for that. Keep an eye out for us. Please feel free to give us a subscription on your podcast platform of choice or on our YouTube page. And feel free to give us a follow on Twitter at Blue Shadow Pod or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. And as well, check out our Facebook page, Blue Shadow. Anything else to add, Dan?
No, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
See you next week, or see you next time.